Welcome back to the show, Reds. This is the Shankly Sessions, the Liverpool podcast we bring you each and every week. If you could head out there onto YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button, and of course, drop a like on the video. This is your Leeds versus Liverpool preview. And before we get into the preview, we're going to be talking about a number of things now that the dust has kind of settled somewhat on the press conference and the embargo press conference and all that kind of stuff that came out. We'll be talking a little bit about transfers, get your thoughts on that kind of stuff as well. And we'll also be talking about Andy Robertson and the official, the elbow, of course, as well. And then we'll get into the Leeds preview. We'll give you our lineups, latest team news, thoughts on the game, predictions, betting odds, all that kind of stuff, what way we think it's going to go. So let's get into this. And of course, we'll start first of all. Of course, this is your lunchtime preview for tomorrow night's game, 8 o'clock, coming at you from Ellen Road. Not an easy place to go to, but certainly a place where we need to go, put in a performance, get the 3 points, get a result, especially what happened at Anfield last time we played Leeds, with that having so many opportunities and then them absolutely stealing it at the end 2-1, which was absolutely horrific. Back, I think it wasn't the Christmas period as far as I know, but Somerville on the day was exceptional, and we were kind of horrific. But before we get into that, just to let you know, later on tonight at 7 o'clock, I think it is, we're going to be doing the Sunday mashup instead of the Monday mashup tomorrow, because obviously tomorrow evening I'll be covering the Liverpool game, so there will be no Monday mashup. So tonight at 7 o'clock, we're going to be reviewing all the Premier League's action, going through all the latest news headlines, all the usual good stuff you get on the Monday mashup. The only difference it'll be a Sunday mashup. So don't forget that, 7 o'clock. 10:15 tomorrow evening, we're going to be bringing you a reaction to the Leeds game. Hopefully it's a positive one. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be doing Dynamo's Dozen, our pro wrestling podcast out there on YouTube as well. It'll be on Wednesday this week. Won't be Tuesday, because Tuesday we'll be covering, obviously, Chelsea, Real Madrid and all that good Champions League stuff. So Wednesday for your pro wrestling show, and then Thursday, as always, Thursday Tier Talk, 9 o'clock with myself and Darren. So that's your kind of lineup for the rest of the week. So let's begin, and let's talk about the press conferences now that the dust has kind of settled. How did you feel about it? I did drop a reaction video to this. Of course, folks, if you want to follow us on TikTok, the QR code is there on the screen as well. If you want to go over onto TikTok, we'll be dropping kind of news, shorts and videos, all that kind of stuff. Plus, all our shows are all over there, and all the information that you need and all our interaction and stuff like that. Scan that QR code on the screen there, head over to bring you straight to our TikTok page, where you can drop a follow on it and follow us there on TikTok. Lots of fun going over there at the moment. Yeah, kind of. I reacted to this the other day, and it was really now that the kind of dust has settled on it, it's very, very frustrating to say the least. I suppose nearly from when you were a kid and stuff like that, you never liked to be told what you can and can't have, and you always felt that, like, if you wanted something, you could have it. And it's no secret on this show that I have said all along that I didn't think that we would get Jude Bellingham. I didn't believe that FSG would put the money in. I didn't believe that Klopp would take the leap with the money. I didn't believe with the size of the rebuild that developed over the last 6 to 8 months in this season, going from 2 midfielders to 5, 6, 7 players, maybe, depending on who's leaving and how we want to pad out the bench and all that kind of good stuff. I didn't think that spending 120 or 130 million on one player would actually happen. So I wasn't so much reacting to the press conference in relation to whether we would or would not get Jude Bellingham. What really did grind my gears was really the fact that I felt like our expectation was being dampened down. Now, following on from that, I listened to some content creators over the weekend and stuff like that, and they kind of gave a different slant on it, which I kind of am coming around to a little bit. And it sounded like as if Klopp was sending a subliminal message to the owners that he wasn't happy, that he was that kid who couldn't get what he wanted because they obviously weren't going to give him the money. And that has a different kind of slant on it, depending on how you look at it. And I'm always open to correction. I'm always open to different ideas. I'm always open up to a different opinion on the situation and stuff like that. So we could see how frustrated he was when you look at the embargo footage as well. It was getting kind of needly and kind of tense in the press conference and stuff like that. And we know this season has been a real tough season for everyone associated with the clubs for lots of different reasons, notwithstanding results and how we've done in competitions and where we find ourselves at the moment, which is kind of out in the wilderness here. So we've gone from potentially a quad, we've gone from fighting on all fronts and nearly completing football to just taking part FC, if you like. That's what we had become this season. And there's lots of reasons behind that as well. And, all the talk of Jude Bellingham, the other two men in the picture there, Jurgen Klopp and John Henry, both culpable in terms of different issues in relation to the season. Obviously FSG out, and obviously with FSG obviously not making the investment that they need, and the narrative that there's no money, and then they tell you have no money to do it, and then a week later they release a report about how record revenues are happening, and then just the timing of some of their announcements this season coinciding with key times in the season has been a little bit kind of strange. And then, of course, you have Jurgen, who we've really struggled this season. Strange lineups, injuries, players playing out of position, and tactically in games, not making changes when we should, the selection of the substitutions, the non-use of certain players, and then all the other background stuff that's come out as well, the club doctor stuff, Julian Ward, analytics department, books being released. It's just been a total shit show this season from start to finish at every level. But yeah, this one was a kind of a weird one as well, because this kind of I wouldn't say for the first time, but this is a time where we actually seen Jurgen Klopp where he doesn't necessarily carry the power in the club that we thought he did. And that we always thought that if Jurgen wanted a player and his heart was set on that player, and we were going to wait 18 months or a year for that player, and we weren't going to bring in players because we were waiting on that player. And certainly it's easy to say now after the fact that, that wasn't the case and who put that out there and stuff like that. Everyone knows that we didn't sign players in our midfield because we were waiting for Jude Bellingham. And the denial of that is not, it's not acceptable at any level. So that's where we find ourselves now. So yeah, there's kind of two ways to look at it, but I didn't like the way in the press conference it felt like our expectations of the club and what we should want for the club should be dampened down, and we should be a bit more realistic. And that line was a big one, the one where 6 players at 100 million each, which no one has ever asked for. But the frustrating thing was really that, as I said in one of the shows that I did, it felt like we've been really going back to the 90s again, where you have all these teams around us. And I mean, if you look at the table now, the table paints a startling picture, really, when you look at some of the teams and how they're developing and what they're doing and the consistency of them. And you look at us just fragmented at every level. An ownership that doesn't seem to have a desire to want us to be at the top table of world football, but yet they want to grow the club and they want to, grow the value of the club. They don't necessarily want to sell, they just want investment. There's questions if that investment came in. There was talk of 1.3 billion the other day for, I think, either 29 or 33% of the club and stuff like that and all, but it wasn't very clear where the 1.3 would go and how it would be used, and how much of that would be forwarded to Jurgen Klopp. And that's the problem. The problem is when you're part of a group like FSG, and we're just one cog in FSG's wheel, if you like. The problem with that is if you're investing in FSG, it doesn't necessarily mean that the funds that are generated from that get directed to Liverpool. They could get directed to the Red Sox, the Penguins, whoever it is, or their pursuit of an NBA franchise, whatever it is. So that's a real problem. So, because people get gassed when they hear that there's an investment coming. That investment is not directly linked to Liverpool. It's linked to FSG, which is an umbrella of obviously many different sporting franchises. So that's a real concern as well. But the bigger concern is really that if they're not going to back Jurgen Klopp, and if this is the case going forward, then what happens then? Where do we end up with the manager? What happens at that point? Is it going to continue? The frustration, does it get to a point where he walks away? Is it likely in the near future that not only are we looking for players, but we're looking for a new manager who's out there and who's available? What would happen then if it's a case where the Jurgen Klopp is coming out of the picture? The fans would absolutely go ballistic, I would imagine. And would that be the decision that pushes the fan base over the edge in terms of getting out there and protesting against FSG and forcing this issue through and stuff like that? Redbird's in the comments. How are you, Redbird? Hope you're having a good weekend. Nice Monday night game at Ellen Road coming up. We're going to do a preview shortly about it. Good to see you in the chat, mate. So yeah, and then the embargo. When you move on to the embargo section of it, it just got real kind of tetchy and real needly. But what I did like about the press conferences, where you don't see in a number of press conferences, is the journalists in there now are starting to ask the questions and starting to ask some of the key questions, like you can't always want what you have, but why can't we? You know what I mean? And they don't like those questions because unfortunately Jurgen's in the hot seat and he's the one who has to answer them. And of course, he has such a connection with the club and a connection with the fans that this gets very uncomfortable for him. So it's a kind of a difficult one in terms of how we see it. And we've spoke this season about how, do we view them separately or do we view them as the same? And if we view them as the same, then what's the view that we take on it? Some of the decisions and as we said, some of the pre-match and post-match press conferences have just been kind of really strange. Obviously, the club's been under a lot of pressure the last 12 months. Redbird back in. No way will Jurgen Klopp walk away from 15 million a year. I wouldn't. Would you, Noel, honestly? I don't know. Like, it's the thing about it is, I don't think. Look, you can say this with Jurgen Klopp. I don't necessarily think it's a money thing. I mean, always in these situations, money is a factor. But when does it become a breaking point where it just becomes toxic and your legacy starts to be damaged? We seen it with Arsene Wenger. Arsene Wenger stayed around at Arsenal way too long, to the point where nearly a hatred built from him, and he had to go. You know what I mean? And it's how you look at that legacy. I suppose after the fact, when things die down and dampen down a little bit, you can look back at the fond memories and the achievements and what they did and stuff like that. But in that moment, it gets very fired up. And I think with Jurgen Klopp, I think there is a special relationship there with the fans. You can see it after the matches. You can see how he talks about them. You can see what he demands from us as fans, and especially those fans in the ground at Anfield on a match day and stuff like that, and the travelling fans. He really does view them as the 12th man, and he views us as the 12th man. And there's a close connection there. He's obviously not short of money, Redbird. I'm sure he's well set for life at this stage, and I'm sure if he left Liverpool, he'd have his choice of plenty of top jobs in world football. So I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is when we look back at the legacy and how things went, and you look at Dortmund, and Mainz and stuff like that, and it's just, It's where you kind of find that balance. I don't think most managers in making that decision, because most of the top managers in world football at this stage all get paid hefty money. And I don't think money comes into the equation. I think if you're at that level, I think the money takes care of itself. It's like kind of when you talk about transfers with footballers, the money side of it literally nearly take care of itself. Like if you look at Haaland's transfer to Man City, I think the money and the wages and all that kind of stuff takes care of itself. I think you know what you're worth, you know what you're going to get, and no one pisses around or beats around the bush on it. But I think it's bigger than that, you know what I mean, in terms of getting toxic and stuff like that. And I think Jurgen Klopp is one of those guys who does care greatly about his legacy. Um, and I just think that would be a big thing. Pity he didn't put the same demands on FSG. Yeah, and we fully agree with that. And I think that's where the frustration with the manager and the fan base has come, especially in this season, where he should have demanded more. He should have stepped up more. Um, and in his own words, he says there's only so much you can do, and then you have to work with what you have. Um, but I don't know whether Mourinho will be that forgiving. I don't know whether Conte will be that forgiving. Um, I think if managers who are out there, if they want something, they want it, and if they don't get it, then there's a decision to be made. Um, and we've been complicit, especially in our midfield, and especially in, I suppose, from Jurgen's point of view, especially in the loyalty and the vision he has shown for some of those players who no doubt have brought us on a great journey and won many things and given us some fantastic moments. But there comes a time, it's like if you have a friend who's going off the rails and you can see it. There comes a time when a conversation has to be had. Um, and that conversation is not necessarily, that's when you truly know where you're at. When you can have that conversation with a friend to say, look, you need to rein it in, things are wrong. That's when you're not hugging. That's when life isn't going great. Sometimes when life is going bad, that's when you truly see friendship. And I just think this is the case. But we'll wait and see, and we'll see how these press conferences and post match stuff goes on. But I would be really, really concerned in terms of his position. We all want him obviously to be there. We all want him to obviously rebuild us into a great side again. But if he's not going to be given the tools and he's not going to be given the support and the financial support, then it gets to a stage where you're really just putting in time and you're hanging around. And that's not really what we want to see. Let's go on and talk about Robbo then and this Hatzidikis and the elbow. Again, as I said to you already, if you want to join our TikTok page, follow us there. QR code is there on the screen. All you have to do is scan it, bring you straight to the page if you want to drop a follow on it. This was an interesting Redbird. I love Jurgen, but FSG are ruining. But FSG are ruining his legacy. Yeah, and the thing about it in terms of that, it's both sides. You know what I mean? It's if he's not getting what he needs or what he feel he needs to bring us back to that top table again, well then he's complicit in his own legacy as well. Henry's in. How are you, Henry? Good to see you, man. Quick Leeds preview here. But we're just going to talk about a few issues. This one was an interesting one in terms of, I suppose there was two narratives on this. We seen what exploded, and we found out that Hatzidikis, he was suspended, pending an investigation. Now, it's amazing, isn't it, when it's an official that's involved, how quick an investigation happens. And I get the feeling that there was obviously a call between Robbo and the club and the officials and the PGMOL, and I'm sure Howard Webb and all was heavily involved in some of that. And at that call, or that Zoom call, or whatever call it was, they came to an agreement that there was nothing to answer and it's business as usual. But it's not so much the decision of this and stuff like that. It's more kind of how quick this was handled, and then you look at things like, you know, Ivan Toney and the gambling charges and stuff like that just goes on and on and on. But these things can be handled so quickly, and I mean, obviously there's different dynamics and you have to gather different information and there's investigations and stuff like that. But it always amazes me how the officials, their stuff gets handled so much quicker. Hi, Redbird, long time no see. I knew you would be joining us, Henry. I'm good, Niall. I had to get out of Jamie's life. Or Jamie, I had to get out of Jamie's life. Oh, yeah, no problem at all. Anti-Liverpool agenda in full stream. It never stops. And Henry, I know Redbird. But yeah, this is one I just wanted to bring up. I mean, the talk was that Robbo had kind of caught him by the arm and he was trying to shove Robbo away, but whatever way he shoved Robbo away, the elbow came up and hit Robbo. But they got rid of it pretty quickly and it got handled pretty quickly, which was kind of interesting. Yeah, absolutely, Henry. Appreciate you on here, man. Always appreciate your company. Yeah, it's getting heated over there, and it will get heated. And look, it gets heated. Look, I get heated on podcasts as well, and I get heated on episodes as well. But it's all only out of love for the club. We're all Liverpool supporters here. We all want the club to be as successful as it can. And when you think about it, this reminds me, if you think about it, we've basically just flipped places with Arsenal. When you think about how toxic Arsenal was for a number of years, and you look at the content creators over there, they were just losing their mind and stuff like that. And we're in the same position now. And this all plays into FSG. I said it a number of times on shows as well. When the fan base is in fighting with each other and not in agreement and not coming together in a wave of positivity to try and make things happen and make things change and stuff like that, FSG and John Henry are just sitting back absolutely loving it because we're all going in on each other. The thing that we forget in all this thing is we all want the same thing. We all want Liverpool to be as successful as possible. I love Jamie's passion for LFC, but some of the things he comes out with, it's not right. Well, that's not a problem, and Jamie be the first one. I love Jamie's content. I always tune into Jamie's shows, and I'd be the first one to tell you there's lots of stuff with Jamie that I agree on. Me and Jamie message back and stuff like that. I love his channel. I love his content. Always tune in. Agree with a lot of what he says and most of what he says, but as content creators, that's what we do. I mean, you don't have to agree with everything. You don't have to agree with every point he makes. And if there's an argument back and forth and stuff like that, Jamie loves that kind of stuff. He's a top guy in terms of going back and forward. We all love Liverpool, but some of our fans talk bollocks, in my opinion. Yeah, absolutely, Redbird, and that's the case. And it's just, it's like when I spoke about earlier about the press conference and stuff like that. I had a view on it there the other day. It hasn't overly changed, but I wanted to recognise other people's views as well, that it was Jurgen putting himself in that position where he wasn't getting everything he wanted for Christmas. And that's the point that I was making on it. And Henry's in spot on, because I don't believe they are actually LFC fans, Redbird. Yeah, you can kind of take that view. I get that as well, Henry, that sometimes some of the stuff that comes out can be that way. Yeah, I love Jamie though. Yeah, absolutely. Not gonna lie. Yeah, his stuff is great. And look, he's a passionate Liverpool fan, like ourselves, who gives up his own private time. And I know he's a busy guy with family and stuff like that. He gives up his private time for his love of the club. And that has to be admired by any of us who are creating content. So absolutely. So yeah, let's get in. Let's talk about transfers. And I put up this slide here talking about triggering people. Talking about going from Jude Bellingham and Nicolo Barella and all these guys and stuff like that, and Alexis McAllister and Caicedo and all these guys that we wanted, Mateus Nunes, and guys that we could have signed and we didn't, and midfielders that we didn't sign and we probably should have, and forwards that we've spent money on that we probably shouldn't have, but we did, but we should have bought midfielders, and it's back and forth and boom, 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 all over the place. But this stuff has come up over the last few days. Clearly, we're heavily linked with Mason Mount. And I think most people know my thoughts on Mason Mount. And that's not to say, don't get me wrong on these players. The situation with these players is Literally, most midfielders on the market that we've been linked up with, if we sign any of them, instantly improves our midfield. Instantly improves our midfield. But that's not to say that maybe this midfielder or that midfielder are the ones that you want. And if you look at the situation at Chelsea, and you can see it even yesterday with the Brighton game, they're an absolute mess. Absolute mess. They're leaderless, they're rudderless, they're clueless. They're everything that you can put a less after sums them up. And I'm not saying our season has been a whole lot better, but we didn't spend the money. And we haven't gone through 3-4 managers or whatever it is. So the real question is, we've been linked with both these guys. Do I see Chelsea unloading both these guys? I don't think so. Are these even guys that we would want? And then, of course, we have to talk about Sadio Mane. We know he had to punch up at Sané the other day. He was suspended by Bayern Munich, I think, for 2 weeks. Hasn't really had a great time at Bayern Munich. Bayern Munich have struggled this season. But certainly Mane has well underperformed for what they thought he would be. So the question is, does that open the door? And I know a number of you guys have spoke about the thoughts that maybe Mo Salah might get sold and all this kind of thing. And would there be a pathway back for Sadio Mane? Would we want him back? Have we moved on from it? How many left-sided forward players do we need? If he did come back, how would it fit in? I know we put him in the centre for a while before he headed off and stuff like that. We know he had come back into good form prior to leaving us. But how do we feel about this? Do we push on from this? Would this be a step back? It's not dissimilar to the Genie situation. But how are we feeling about transfers right now? When you hear about who we're linked with and who we're kind of looking at, and what kind of level does that bring us to when we know what Arsenal, City, Newcastle, Villa, United, all these teams, and how they're going to strengthen and what they're going to bring in and how good they're playing and all that kind of stuff. So let me know your thoughts on this as well in the chat, what you think. Henry, it's very stressful being a Liverpool fan. It absolutely is, Henry. And I think, I suppose when we look at it, I mean, there's different levels of stress. At the moment, we're stressed because we're getting it in the neck from everyone. It's pretty heated. We're poor, but we're also infighting as well as Liverpool fans. So it's getting a bit toxic. There's FSG out. There's people talking about Klopp out. And every week there's a different narrative, and then the journalists are getting fed information. They're releasing information that's ratcheting things up as well. 1 minute we're all in for Jude Bellingham, and Klopp is going to get all the financial support he needs to land the players he wants. The next thing, we lodge a bid for Jude Bellingham, which is borderline embarrassing from what we know. And then the thing is, we're not in for Jude Bellingham any longer, and this narrative just gets short. I mean, that's the narrative we got within a week, those 3 different narratives in a week. So everyone's getting excited that Klopp's going to get backed. Then we hear that a bid is going to go in. Then we hear that Jude Bellingham is going to make his decision and he's going to announce it or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden we're not in the race anymore, and the race doesn't even start till June. So you can see where this all goes. It's really, really difficult. I don't think Sadio will play for Bayern ever again after smacking Sané. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a difficult one, and it's no secret that he hasn't settled in there. So the question is, I suppose, to everyone is, would we take him back? Should we take him back? If we took him back, does it improve things? What way would it work? We know there was a bit of a fracturing there between himself and Mo. So what way would that work, or is that all good? Who knows? We were on the outside, but it felt very strange last season as well, that the relationship always seemed a little bit estranged. And two boys very competitive in the AFCON. We know the history of what happened there, plus the World Cup and stuff like that. So So let's see what happens with this. Problem is, in today's world, if you don't agree with someone's opinion, they shout you down. They don't understand the meaning of debates or and different opinions. That is very true, Henry. But you know what? You know what I do, Henry, and I always do it, and you'll see it even when I appear on other shows and stuff like that as well. I don't shout. I don't bawl down people. I just sit back. I make my point. I'm very, very relaxed. I, I don't care. I don't really care if people shout about my opinion. I don't really care if people try to shout over my opinion and stuff like that. I let them gas out their jaws and their cheeks till they're finished, and then I'll just make my point. And if people agree with it, they agree with it. There's loads of times I make points on this podcast. Myself and Darren disagree all the time, sometimes all the time on things between players, between tactics, between results, all that kind of stuff. It's all good. It's all good. Henry's right. I agree, Redbird. Absolutely. But that's, as I said to you lads, don't it's you know what I mean? You're never gonna win a debate with a person who shouts their head off. But you know something? You're never actually gonna lose it either. So that's the way to look at it. People harp on and on about racism, but when a black player Sane says something racist to another black player Mane, somehow the racism is hushed up. We all know the agenda there. Yeah, maybe that's the case. I know they did it. I know there was a falling out on the pitch, like they were having to go off each other on the pitch as well. So I love Mane, but don't want to re-sign him. We need to move forward and not backward. Absolutely. And listen, I'm not disagreeing with that point at all. And Henry's in total agreement as well. Um, I know, Niall, that's one reason why I come onto your channel. Yeah, because always welcome on here. Make no mistake about it. This is not we don't have to go crazy on this channel, and I'm not saying other channels don't either. I really enjoy that content as well. And listen, I can ratchet it up and I can go crazy when I need to and when I have to. Um, but I've often found that it's just better just to, keep it where you need to keep it, have a good, nice discussion about stuff and see where you're at. We don't need to go absolutely crazy. We go, listen, when I do the shows, I'm as frustrated as hell and I'm bubbling up inside. By me, by my facials. But they're just three that we were talking about there. And I don't know. Everyone knows I don't necessarily want Mason Mount at our club or Conor Gallagher. I've been a big fan of Conor Gallagher when he was at Crystal Palace. I thought he was a real good player. He's flattered to deceive at Chelsea. Mount is kind of in and out of the side for various reasons. I just don't think people can actually figure out what his position is and where's the best place to play him. So it's a kind of a difficult one as well, and especially coming into our club where we kind of need a plan. We need to bring in sort of parts and elements and pieces of this jigsaw to give us options for different ideas and stuff like that against different teams, instead of being the kind of predictable 4-3-3 that we had become. So maybe he gives us that. I don't know. But certainly, I think we should be aiming at just maybe somewhere else and a bit more quality and stuff like that. Both these guys are in and out of the Chelsea side. So are they good enough for Liverpool in a rebuild? Who knows? Henry's in. I have had my outburst on channels and on my own about stuff, but I'm passionate about stuff. Absolutely. And of course, we all know there's a fine line between OTT and expression your passion, of course. But I have respect for people's opinions too. Absolutely. And that's the way to be. Look, no one's either right or wrong in this, you know what I mean? No one knows what's going on here except internally in the club. So Jurgen Klopp knows what's going on. FSG knows what's going on. And although they don't have to tell us everything and give us every little bit of information and, look for our opinion on stuff and things like that, I think they could do a better job in terms of their communication to stop the fan base and stuff like that getting as toxic as it can. And John Henry spoke about this when he messed up a couple of times about the communication and how they have to work harder on it and stuff like that. If we had no intentions of going in for Jude Bellingham, or if we were naive to believe that his value over the course of this season wasn't going to go up and up and up and up and up, that could have been dampened down very quickly to say, look, we'd love to sign Jude Bellingham, but the financial situation just doesn't work for us. And of course, we'll still be disappointed in that, and we'll turn around and go, well, why doesn't the financial situation work for us? But at least keep us in some sort of a loop, you know what I mean? Not necessarily ask our opinion, but just be better with communication in a better way instead of sitting back. And of course, it suits FSG and stuff like that as well, because they let things, it's like a wound that you let fester, and it just grows bigger and bigger and bigger till it gets infected, and then it just explodes. And this is what's happened here. They've let the fan base explode in on each other to deflect from the deficiencies that's happened, both at the managerial, backroom staff, and ownership level. And that's the truth about what's happened here. But we'll follow on. We'll keep an eye on these transfers. I kind of don't want to talk a huge amount about transfers because it does get really toxic. And look, we're linked with every player with a heartbeat. So, like, what way does it go? Let's get on and talk a little bit then about Leeds. This Leeds game coming up at 8 o'clock at Ellen Road. Huge game for both teams. For us, it's going to be us trying to not go 6 games without a win for the first time under Jurgen Klopp's reign. So we've got a tough trip to Ellen Road on a Monday night. Never an easy place to go. Leeds look a little bit susceptible at the moment, and they're not playing great. But we always know Ellen Road and the passion of those Leeds fans up at Ellen Road is always a tough place to go. And especially when they play a traditional top 4, top 6 club. But that's what we're looking at doing. We're trying to break this duck at the moment without going 6 games without a win for the first time under Jurgen Klopp. Obviously, we know what happened in the last game. We went 2-0 down against Arsenal. Looked like they were cruising. The blow up with Xhaka and and Trent triggered a reaction from the Liverpool team and the fan base in Anfield. We came back to draw 2-2 at the death, and we could have probably won it. Given another 4 or 5 minutes, we probably would have went on a 1-3-2 where Arsenal absolutely collapsed at least second half, which showed that when we are on it and when we have our game together and when we're up for it and we're motivated, we can compete with anyone. For Javi Garcia's Leeds, they were absolutely demolished by Crystal Palace. They started out pretty well in the game, created a number of chances, and actually took the lead. But that 10 minutes, that 15 minutes after half time was an absolute capitulation by them. And we've seen this in Leeds this season where they've started out playing really, really well. Then they kind of die off and they have that soft centre in them, and that's where teams can take advantage. And we've seen that when they do go behind or when they do cough up goals, they just kind of melt somewhat. It's just, you can see them nearly dying of death on the pitch, really, when you look at it, So they ran out 5-1. Crystal Palace beat them. SA was absolutely class, and this was a 5-1. Remember, without Wilfred Zaha in the team. So Palace doing wonderful things at the moment under Roy Hodgson. I think they've won their first 3 games under him, as far as I know. They beat Southampton, I think it was yesterday, as well. But if you let's get some. If you look at the current form that's there at the moment, Leeds at the moment with 3 losses, 2 wins, and a draw. So kind of climbing away from that relegation battle and then getting sucked back into it and stuff like that. And obviously, results today is going to be really important for them. Of course, you have West Ham and Arsenal coming up. That's going to be a big result in terms of the relegation battle and the title race, obviously. Arsenal will look to extend the gap again back to 6 points. And then if you look for us, we're going to try and close the gap on Brighton, and Leeds are obviously down there in around that relegation as well. So it's going to be huge for them. So this is a massive game in terms of both clubs, even though you can kind of see how it's going to kind of affect both clubs, if you like. Now, a bit of team news. If you look at Leeds, Stuart Dallas is obviously out, and Tyler Adams, big losses for them. Nanto probably comes back in into the forward line. Christensen, Liam Cooper, and Rodrigo are also among realistic options for Javi Garcia, which should be interesting. We know that Alisson Becker and Konate hadn't trained for a few days, but it looks like both will be training over the weekend and will have trained over the weekend and look like that they should be okay. Absolutely vital that both those men play for us. So, if you look at it at the moment, we know Luis Diaz is going to be back in the squad, but that little sort of token that he said was about integrating him back into the team, which means he's going to take his time on him. So, he'll probably look at using him as a substitution. Darwin obviously will be in there. Thiago will be in there. So, you'll see probably Curtis Jones and They're saying Diogo Jota might drop out, but I have a different idea in my lineup, and I'll show you my lineup now. So if you look at the Liverpool lineup that we're looking at here at the moment, I think the back five kind of picks itself. You got Alisson in there with Trent, Konate, Van Dijk, and Robbo. Of course, let us know your starting lineup, whatever you think. Where am I? Over our under 21s just equalised against our neighbours right at the death 1-1. That's good to hear. That's good to hear. But this, let me know your lineups, guys, and let me know what you think and stuff like that. I think we will see Luis Diaz. I think he'll probably get 20 minutes in the game. You probably bring him on 65 or 70 minutes, stuff like that. But that's our starting lineup there. You're going to go with a midfield of Thiago, Fabinho, and Jordan Henderson, I would imagine. And then up front, kind of tucked in a little bit tighter, Salah in there, Nunes and Jota on the left. Now, the reason I've done that, you could switch that around, or you could put Cody in, and we know that Lewis will come on, Luis Diaz. But the reason I did that is if you look at that Leeds defence, that Leeds defence is not too bad on the fullback positions. It's kind of quite strong. So that's what I thought, maybe switching Darwin into the middle. You might be able to create a bit of chaos there between Coke and Cooper. Or not Coke and Cooper, Cooper and Christensen. So not Coke and Cooper, I should say. So that's why my thinking was to put Darwin in the middle and maybe Jota out on the left. And then you'd have the options of introducing Cody, Gakpo, and Luis Diaz later on in the game, depending on how it's going. But let us know what your thoughts are and who you will put in there. Can't wait for Lucho to be in full flight. Just hope they don't bring him back too soon. Yeah, I think they'll. He'll have to get some minutes on Monday. I mean, he seems to be back around. Henry, I agree, Red. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we don't want them to rush him back. I mean, I think this for us at this stage, most of our season at this stage is being written off. I mean, we're kind of fingernailing into a top four, but I'm not even thinking about it at this stage because we're 5 points off Brighton, dare I say, and you have Brighton, Villa, Newcastle, Spurs, and United generally playing good football. We've seen what happened with Newcastle yesterday, getting beaten by Villa. We've seen Spurs getting caught by Bournemouth at the death. Not much kind of banter that can come out of that because Bournemouth did a number on us as well. But this is kind of what I've gone in with. I think Darwin can cause a bit of chaos in the middle of Leeds' defence. So I'd be playing Darwin up the middle as opposed to out on the left. Maybe Jota out on the left. But again, you could switch that with Cody if you wanted, in and out if you liked. And I think we will see Lewis on Monday night. Reds then first of all, full time first of all, Henry, 1-1 under 21s. Not bad, but would have started Cody and put Jota on the bench. Yeah, as I said, you could interchange both of them and stuff like that. And then I suppose if you do, are you going to play Cody out on the left? Are you going to play Nunes out on the left? What way? Or could they just switch it up? Maybe don't keep them defined to a certain position. Maybe let them kind of flow a little bit and do their thing. Maybe might be a good way. Henry's in. We are never changing from a 4-3-3. You say that, Henry, but I think next season we're going to be forced to. Because if we stick with a 4-3-3, I don't know how you're going to keep all our forward players happy. Because you've got Luis Diaz back primarily on the left. Jota can operate on the left. Cody can operate on the left. Darwin can operate on the left. So how do you mix that up unless you're going to go with a front man? Unless you go with a 4-2-3-1. If you go with a 4-2-3-1, then what way does that affect then our plans for midfield and who we want to bring in? So it's an interesting dynamic, and we spoke about it last week. Zach Football TV, how are you, Zach? How's things? Hope you're doing well, my friend. Good to see you in the chat there. Absolutely. Make sure, folks, you go over and subscribe to Zach Football TV as well. He's a good kid doing things over there. Good lad. So is meant, Zach. Absolutely. But that's the kind of lineup that I'm going with. I just want to see some of the powerful situations coming up through the middle. I think that's where Leeds are kind of more vulnerable, is through that middle. And you can see the way Palace did it last week as well. They sort of cut them up through the middle a number of times as well. And that's where they were at their weakest. And that's where we kind of want to put our strongest. And that's where Darwin can create that kind of captain chaos stuff, if you like. So that's the lineup that I looked at there. Again, as I said, we'll bring you a match reaction tomorrow night, 10:15. It'll be a late one with a 9 o'clock kickoff. We are back 7 o'clock tonight for the Sunday mashup instead of the Monday mashup. So we'll review all the weekend's action and the headlines coming out of that later on. Guys, let us know your predictions. What are you going with a prediction for this one? I'm going to go with a 3-1 Liverpool. And I'm going to go with Darwin. I'm going to go with Trent with a set piece. And I'm going to go with Luis Diaz with a goal on his return. And that would round out a great Monday night football. And Leeds to pick up a consolation. But I'm going to go 3-1 Liverpool. I'm going to bring a bit of positivity. Played really well in that second half against Arsenal. Absolutely battered them. And we need to bring this form back in now. We need to go on some sort of a run. Give us some sort of positivity to finish out the end of the season and see where it takes us. I don't think top 4 is on the cards. But look, we've seen Newcastle and Spurs yesterday fall away, and pending what happens today with West Ham and with Forest United as well coming up, that's going to be a cracking game, I'd imagine, with the players that United are missing. But let's see how those results go. If Forest were to pick up a win, then things might get a little bit tighter if we could pick up a win tomorrow night. But let's see what happens. Henry's in. I believe Salah will go to PSG if we don't get fourth. I believe Jota will be sold. He seems another Torres who scored 50 and then buggered off. I'm not too sure. I think with the Salah one, I think that could be something that they might want to look at, which is really frustrating as well, that you have to sell off your best players to fund other purchases, if you like. Or maybe we're getting to a stage where we look at that Salah contract and maybe it wasn't the thing to do, or maybe we need to cash in on him now and earn some decent money off him while he's still decent and use that money to fund other projects or whatever it is. But it would be an interesting dynamic if that was something that was announced. With Jota's kind of a different one, because I think Jota probably wants to play football. And as I said earlier in the show, depending on what formation we go with and what personnel we have and how we want to play in, will dictate who gets played, apart from injuries and that kind of stuff. So that could be a situation where Jota might see himself now as the fifth front man or whatever it is, and depending on who we bring in as well. I mean, it was the day. Would we be shocked this summer as well if we didn't buy a midfielder and we bought another forward guy? Good Lord, the way things have gone, be an absolute disaster. But he might want to play more regular football, and I know he's been linked with Newcastle, and I know if we did end up selling him or he did end move, we get decent money for him as well. Redbird's coming in. He's going with a 2-0 Nunes and Salah. I like that Redbird. Debatable Niall. He's 31 in June. He is 31 in June, but Henry, when you look at him, there's been a number of factors this season, and I've been very critical of Mo Salah, as you know. I think his stats have been okay, but I think if you delve down into them, you can see there's a number of games where he just goes missing and he isn't in the game at all. Some of that is related to the drop-off in the team as well. Some of it has related to the support structures around him that makes him really good. Like, you got to remember, Mo Salah just hasn't made Mo Salah the great player that he was. I mean, there was a lot of hard work put in there by Mane, by Firmino, by Trent, by Jordan Henderson. All these other bits came together to propel him into being how good he was as well. And that's the thing I always say about us as a football club in Liverpool. We've always played in this successful period under Jurgen Klopp as a unit. And when one piece of that unit falls down or one piece of that jigsaw goes missing, the jigsaw doesn't get complete. And I think putting Salah out as wide as they did this season, I think obviously the drop-off in Trent and Jordan and that link-up play down that right-hand side has really affected Mo's game this season as well. I think he keeps himself really, really physically fit. At 31, I think he can still do damage. We've seen it when we need him to do it. He can still show up when he wants to and when motivated to. But I just think it's been a frustrating season all round that has dampened down a lot of players. And I do firmly believe, if we don't believe that Virgil van Dijk is finished and that he can come back and be really good again, given a pre-season and time off and stuff like that, and a cleansing of this season, if you like. If we believe that that might be the case, then we have to believe that that's the case with Mo Salah as well. And let's be honest, as we said, Mo Salah, his numbers aren't necessarily really, really bad. I mean, obviously, when everyone looks at Haaland, if you take Haaland out of the picture, then it's a more even thing because he's just unbelievable. But I think Mo and Virgil both have the ability to bounce back from this season. But a lot will be dictated by what we do in the summer and what moves we make and who goes out and who comes in will dictate that picture. And as you said, if we don't have Champions League football, could we be staring down the barrel of potentially transfer requests being put in and stuff like that? Maybe Mo doesn't fancy at 31 being part of a 2 or a 3 year rebuild if that's potentially what it's going to take. Who knows? So let's see what way that progresses. We will keep our eye on it. Henry's back in. Good point, Niall. I'm not sure regarding Virgil. Well, none of us are sure, Henry, because none of us have been sure all season about anything. Every player has been questioned. Every player has played poor. We love Alisson Becker, and we know that if we didn't have Alisson Becker, God knows where we would be in the league. But I mean, even he at times this season has had his moments, and I wouldn't even pick them out because he's definitely been our player of the season. There's no doubt about it. But again, you've got Darwin who'll have a season under him. He'll have a better idea of the Premier League. He'll be pushed on. He'll be a much better player next season. Cody will have adjusted in as well. Luis Diaz will be back. I'm not going to dare say like a new signing because, when you say those things on podcasts as well, people go, a new signing, we're letting them off the hook again, or you FSG in, all this other stuff, you know what I mean? It's always the way. Yeah, absolutely, Henry. I think if you take a step back from it and you look at things logically at Liverpool, we could see what's unfolded over the last year. We need to figure out what's going on in the back room and why people why would Julian Ward give up his job at Liverpool to take up the same job at Ajax? I mean, just think about that. Think about that from a career profile situation. Why would a guy make that decision? This is a guy who was tutored for years under Michael Edwards, who arguably was the best in the business when you look back on it. So why would you make that decision? What's going on? Is there something we don't know about? Why are these guys making that decision? Why did the analytics guy decide to go? Why did it take so long to get in a club doctor? All these other things that make things. These are the things that make successful. You have to have all these things going on in the background, just not what necessarily happens on the pitch. Then we argue, why has Jurgen Klopp, why is this unfolding under his watch? Why aren't we getting Jude Bellingham when we mortgage the season for him? Why wouldn't we be going for Alexis McAllister and Conceição and Nicolo Barella? Why are we looking to Mason Mount and Conor Gallagher? Why are we so entrenched in the homegrown situation? When we're already covered from a homegrown point of view. I listened to Sam last night on his podcast talking about it. Love his podcast as well. Love his passion and everything that he does now. But he made a very good point last night. He says if you have a 25-man squad and you need eight homegrown players. He made a great analogy, which was absolutely cool. He says you could still field 11 Brazilians and have 6 Brazilians on the sub bench and still cover your homegrown situation. So I don't think we should get caught up in that. And I think if that's our decision making around Mount and Conor Gallagher, I think we're signing players really for the wrong reason and at the wrong level and stuff like that. And look, I firmly believe if you're signing players, I know sometimes you get anomalies like, you pick up an Andy Robinson for 8 million a Hull and it just hits the ground running and it becomes a total success and that's all brilliant and it works. How many of them work? How many of them are you going to do in the career of a manager at a club? Eventually you have to pony up and buy in the right quality and stuff like that. And like I said, the problem that we've had at the moment, and we've had a lot of problems with our formation and how we want to play and the confusion and all those kind of things that have happened. The first starting point for me is we have to figure out what's our plan. What formations do we want to deploy? Are we going to do 4-3-3? Are we going to go with a 3-5-2? Are we going to go with a 3-4-3? Are we going to go with a 3-2 or 4-2-3-1? What is it we're going to do? And then how do we deploy all those pieces in and who's best fitted for that? Not just a scattergun approach of signing players. We've seen what's happened at Chelsea. They've gone out and signed everyone and their sister and brought players back off loan and stuff like that. And it's an absolute mess. It's an absolute mess because it's rudderless, it's leaderless. You know, someone tell me what formation Chelsea were playing yesterday against Brighton when Enzo Fernandez at one stage is at left back, and I think they had Sakaria on the right wing and all this kind of thing. It's or whatever it was. It's just all over the place. It's no idea, you know. So, folks, I'm going to go with a 3-1 for him. That is your Leeds preview, and a number of other news topics and all that kind of good stuff. Absolutely appreciate you joining me on the shows all the time, as I say. And as I said to you already, there, if you want to scan that QR code there, that'll bring you straight to our TikTok if you want to drop us a follow on that. And I will be back tonight at 7 to talk about all things Premier League and the news. And let's see where it's going in the title run. Let's see what happens. But keep posted. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell notification for when we go live. Big up to Redbird and Henry. And make sure you follow Sack's channel there. Go over there and subscribe to it and stuff like that. And let's see where we end up. Talk to you again real soon, folks. Come on, you Reds. You'll never walk alone.